We are in a 2002 Monte Carlo. It's looking a little rough around the edges. Um, so it's here because it has misfires. They took it somewhere. Someone told them it needs injectors. They've already changed plugs, I guess, and wires or whatever's related to that. So then someone else told them it needed injectors, right? So they bought like I don't know if there's a V8 or V6, whatever, but they bought how many injectors that they need off of Amazon. They said it for like $30. That's why don't put those things on your car. So then someone else is telling them that the engine is no good and it needs a new engine. Well, let's go ahead and start it up. That's definitely more than one cylinder misfiring. It just feels pretty rough. So I'm guessing these are the injectors I was just talking about that they got off of I think they got them off of eBay. And the owner wrote down the codes. Insufficient coolant temp for closed loop fuel control. Cylinder 2 misfire, evap emission system, evap purge control valve circuit, motor making noise and ticking. Okay, so first things first, let's see if it has a clear flood mode and if we can listen to the engine. Alright. That was not good. So I hope you guys can hear that. There is something wrong here. The engine does not, it sounds like at least one cylinder is not contributing. So let's do a relative compression test and see how low that cylinder is compared to the rest of them. Alright, so I've already gone ahead and completed the relative compression test. As you can see, I got my clamp down there going to the starter. And then I have a second channel as just a secondary pickup. And I just chose any ignition cable. And it turns out the one that I chose is actually cylinder number 2. So it's the one that was written down on that paper that we have the misfire for. So here's what I came up with. And I actually did this test 2 or 3 times just to be 100% sure. And I keep getting the same exact results. So yeah, look at that. We have a completely dead cylinder, and we have 3 cylinders that just aren't very happy. Okay, so I thought it was kind of weird at first. That's why I decided to run the test multiple times, and each time I got the same exact results. But the last time I did it is when I decided to use a little clamp right here on the ignition wire so we can get a point of reference. And this is, I believe it's a waste spark system, so that's why we're kind of seeing more than one spark on the green line. But if we line up this tall green line where there's spark occurring, you see it lines up with the dead cylinder. Okay, see that? Alright, so I did not know this was number 2, the first one right here. I just randomly picked one, and then when I saw this data right here, just looking at it, I was like, oh, I think I chose 2 just by pure accident. So when I pulled up the cylinder numbers, yeah, of course I was dead on. So the way this engine is laid out is gonna be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and yeah. So it's this first one that has no compression at all. And if you remember on the paper, the owner did write that there's excessive engine noise we have like a, I don't know, a lifter or rocker arm or something. It's possible. My biggest concern is not so much the dead cylinder, but the other three. Okay, so let's see. Let's assume this is laid out. I don't know how this is laid out. Let's just assume this is laid out in the correct order. Okay, so the firing order of this engine is simple: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So if we know our dead cylinder is going to be cylinder number 2, right? So that means this would be 3, 4, 5, and 6. Oh, dang it. I didn't even touch the screen. What the heck? We just lost our information. Anyways, we saw that, okay? So at first I was thinking, like, what if 4, 5, and 6 happen to be on the same bank? Do we have a head gasket issue? But no, it would be 4, 5, and 6, I believe. But it still doesn't mean there isn't a head gasket issue. I mean, on that paper, did it say anything about coolant? I can't remember. Let me see. Oh, we just have a insufficient coolant temp. Alright. Now what I want to do next is, I thought about pulling the valve cover real fast and seeing if we could see if there's something wrong with, I don't know, a rocker arm or something, right? You're probably wondering, why don't I do a leak down test first? And simply because I don't have the tool to do a leak down test. I've never really purchased one. I don't know why, I just haven't purchased one yet. I'm not gonna dig into it much further than this, okay? If I don't see an actual problem right here, I'm not concerned with, oh, if it's leaking out the intake valve, the exhaust valve, or it's going past the piston rings. I'm not concerned about any of that, because the owner is not going to put that type of money into it. So if I don't see a problem with the rocker arm or something like that, then there's a different reason why this engine has low compression, absolutely zero compression on this cylinder. And at that point, they're most likely either going to get rid of the car or replace the engine. Alright, so I pulled out the spark plug for number 2, and I'm just looking inside of here, and I don't see anything that jumps out at me. Just looking for some obvious problems. Here's the spark plug that was in cylinder 2. The gap kind of looks big to me, but still, that's not an issue right now. And the plugs are new. Got it all taken apart. I don't see anything out of the ordinary. Let's go ahead and crank the engine over and look at this. Alright, so like I mentioned, I don't have a leak down tester, but I have my smoke machine, and it kind of does the same thing. So we just saw both of the intake and the exhaust valves moving just fine, right? I got my smoke machine pumping into that cylinder via where the spark plug would go, and I've already cranked the engine over by hand using my giant wrench right here. And as I was rotating it, I saw the intake valve open, and then we started to get smoke out of the intake manifold. Okay, so I kept rotating until right now both of the valves are closed. So we're not getting any more smoke out of the intake manifold. I checked the dipstick. We're not getting anything out of it. I stood here for quite some time and absolutely no smoke out of it. And another thing to account for is, since I disconnected this pipe right here, we could actually look at the cooling system. So if there was pressure bleeding off into the cooling system, signifying like a head gasket, we would probably see bubbles right here. And as you can see, there are no bubbles. Alright, so that's a good sign. But one thing you did notice is, so everything should be sealed right now, right? It's pumping air into the combustion chamber, and it should be 100% sealed. But looking at the smoke machine, we have a leak somewhere. Alright? So we checked the intake, we checked the oil, we checked the cooling system. The only thing left is the exhaust. Now I know this is going to be very hard to pick up. I may have to go get my light, but there is smoke coming out the exhaust. So what's happening here is if smoke could get past that valve with the very little PSI that I'm putting into that smoke machine, imagine with the engine actually running, all the pressure that it creates. So it's definitely the exhaust valve that's leaking on this cylinder. The other 3 cylinders that's, 4, 5, and 6 that's saying it was low, I'm not gonna look into it. It's not worth it, because if the owner is not gonna fix, what you gotta think about it, it's gonna need a timing job, it's gonna need a head gasket, at least one of them, and everything else that goes along with that. If they're not gonna fix this, then what good is it, figuring out the other one? Then who knows? Maybe the little bit of low compression on the other 3 cylinders maybe isn't a big deal. Like, say if you got number 2 working properly, the engine might run halfway decent. But the biggest problem here is cylinder 2, and if they're not going to put the money into fixing this, which I'm not doing this, I wouldn't touch something like this. But if they're not going to take it to a shop to get that fixed, and looking at the rest of it, it's kind of a waste of time. So that's the biggest problem we have going on here. And yeah, the smoke machine is still bouncing around even though the valves are sealed. Now, because this is actually just a relative compression, I want to see what the actual compression is on this cylinder. I don't believe it's 0. I just don't believe that. Seeing the amount of leak that we have past the exhaust valve, it's a relative compression test. So in comparison to the other cylinders, it's reading 0, but I don't think it's actually at 0, if that makes any sense. So let's do an actual compression test on this one cylinder, and I don't have a tripod with me, so I'm gonna have to shut off the camera and I'll start recording once I get the results. Alright, so here's the compression that we got for cylinder number 2, and we are just a hair over 90 psi, which is nowhere near what it should be. I don't know the exact specs, but I did a quick Google search and I saw something about 185 psi. So if that's the case, then this thing has about half of the psi of what should be in the cylinder. And sure, I could pull out another cylinder and check it, but I don't want to. I'm just trying to put everything back together at this point. But yeah, I could definitely see why the relative compression test was saying that this one has 0 psi, is because at this low of a pressure, I guess it would be 0 psi compared to the height of the other ones in a relative compression test. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but that's way off. So I'm just gonna go ahead and put everything back together. One of the boxes of injectors. So in case you're wondering, this is what a $5 injector looks like. It feels very cheap. Plastic just feels cheap. Yeah, don't put this crap in your car. Great, and I lowered the window and it doesn't go back up. You know what, the owner did mention this to me. Damn it, I wish I would have never touched it. I forgot all about it. Now it's parked out on the street and the window won't go up. So I thought I was done with this car, but because now that the window won't go up, I can't leave it like that. I hate crap like this. So now I have to, luckily door panel's off, so that's nice. Most likely it just has a bad switch. So what I'm going to do is simply just try to put power to the motor itself to send the window back up. Alright, so that's it. As you can see, it's kind of hard to tell, but I got the window up. Simply just put, these are the motor wires. This is the brown one and the blue one. So I just put ground to the brown and power to the blue wire, and it went up. Simple as that. I'm not going to touch this. The owner said he'll be here in about an hour to pick it up. If I had to take a wild guess on this, I'd just say we have a bad switch. Simple as that. Call it whatever you want. Say I'm shooting the parts cannon at it, and no, I'm not. I'm just giving my best guess based off of looking at it. Obviously the motor works, and flexing the wires right here did not do anything to change the window going up. So I'm just gonna go out on a limb and say the switch is bad. Alright, so really that's it for this Chevy.